Thank you, Bill. The Great Lakes' $7 billion sports fishery industry could be in jeopardy due to a possible breach of the Asian carp. This big fish could have a devastating effect on local species and waterways. It's a big problem with possibly some big fallout. Here to talk a little bit more about this, Dr. Dan O'Keefe. He's with the Michigan Sea Grant. Dan, thanks for coming in tonight. We appreciate this. This is a big deal because apparently now it's been detected in this channel. It's about a few miles just away from the big lake. They've put up some barriers. They've been trying to stop this. Is it inevitable that it will get into the Great Lakes ecosystem?
Unfortunately, it probably is inevitable that eventually they will find evidence of Asian carp in Lake Michigan. They've actually already found one of the species, bighead carp, in Lake Erie. But the good news is that even if they get in here, it's not a foregone conclusion that they will naturally reproduce. They have pretty strict reproductive requirements, so there's still some hope.
Part of the reproduction system happens in rivers, and a lot of concern centers around the St. Joseph and Kalamazoo rivers. This fish could become highly populated in those waterways. That's a big problem.
And the Grand, too. Absolutely. They need a long stretch of free-flowing river, and the places where they've really become a problem are in large muddy rivers like the Grand, like the Kalamazoo, and the St. Joe.
So we've got the ripe environment for these fish to repopulate. Talk about these species. They're aggressive. We've seen the video. They jump out of the water at the sound of the propeller.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary when you see these things. It is.
And there's two species. The one that jumps is the silver carp. And the other one's the bighead carp, which actually gets larger, at least 90 pounds. Very large fish. And they're not so much aggressive towards other fish as they are filter feeding. They're taking out the bottom of the food chain. And they really get to high densities. And that jumping can be a big problem for boaters.
They're kind of bullies, aren't they? They kind of get in there and they muscle the way. They push all the other native species out and they take over, essentially. That's what that everyone's worried about, that this could collapse the sports fishing industry in the Great Lakes.
And really, it's that taking out the bottom of the food chain. It's eating the plankton that the other fish need to live. And again, it's probably going to be the biggest problem in warm water areas like bays, places like Saginaw Bay, and in big muddy rivers. Those are the areas where the carp really have enough food to survive and have the potential to outcompete the other fish.
And they can make it through the winters, icing over and stuff like that.
That should be no problem. They can survive cold water with no problem. They probably don't prefer water as cold as what we have out in the middle of Lake Michigan, but there's plenty of warmer water areas for them to feed in, and winters are no problem.
All right, and their latest plan now is to poison the river, essentially.
And actually, they won't be, to my knowledge, there's no plan to poison the entire stretch of canal that they've got into. It's only the area right near the barrier, which they were already planning to poison because they need to turn the barrier off in order to basically do some maintenance on it, because it's still in its infancy, so they need to see how well it's standing up to the use.
All right, scary stuff. Dr. Dan O'Keefe, he's with the Michigan Sea Grant. We appreciate your time tonight.
My pleasure.